Portland Culinary Podcast on Portland Culinary Radio. I'm Stephen Shaw, your host. We're doing a special On the Road episode. We're here in Bozeman, Montana, and today we have the privilege of being at Wildrye Distilling, which is Wildrye Distilling, just phenomenal. I love it, really excited about it, and got two of the founders here. There's four of you guys that founded it, right?
That's correct.
But I've got the two most important ones here. No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know if I go that far.
Phillip Sullivan and Ben Ganzer. How are you guys doing?
Excellent, thank you. Fantastic.
I am
coming in today.
So excited to drink some bourbon and some gin and tonic and all kinds of stuff, but I want to tell your story, and it was really fun. I was doing research, who do I want to talk to when I'm in Bozeman? And, I love spirits. I love distilling. I love to drink. I only drink gin before breakfast. I make an occasional exception. And then, after, before breakfast is gin, and then I'll drink gin after afternoon. That's okay too. But, a lot of people said you got to go to Wildrye, and I had a gut sense that it would be as good as it was, and then having tasted through your stuff, it is amazing. And so really excited to tell our listeners your story. But all right, so just as a warning, sometimes I have to give a warning to listeners. So Phillip has taught me about organic photonic materials. We did a Portland Culinary Podcast episode with Jennifer Blozer with Oregon Coast Wasabi, and she taught me about hydrophilic molecules. So, Phillip, you kind of have a science background, don't you?
A little bit.
Okay,
I guess you could say that.
So what's your PhD in?
So, I actually have a dual doctorate from University of Washington, and it's in organic chemistry and nanotechnology.
So we have been here to keep Phil in line, but I'm teasing, but I have great respect. I love scientists. I don't understand half of what you say, but it's phenomenal. But if you do go too deep in the weeds, I'm going to reel it back into English. So just a warning. My son Zach's here, and as he said, he says, I love the guy. It's just great. I want to learn from him. Okay, so first we'll cover a little bit about your background, Phil, and then we'll talk about your background, Ben, and then we'll talk about the distillery, and we'll drink some stuff and talk about it. So, Phil, where were you born?
I was born in Austin, Texas. My dad was in the Air Force. He was stationed at Bergstrom Air Force Base at the time.
I love me some Austin, Texas. I co-authored a cookbook with a friend of mine, Tiffany Harlick. She's a food writer from Austin. Have you been back since you were born?
I have not.
Man, you got to go. They have, we have food carts in Portland. They have food trucks in most of the United States. But nomenclature, there's a word you will actually know what it means. Most people don't know when I say nomenclature. But in Austin, they call them food trailers. Whether they have an engine and a steering wheel or not, they're food trailers. So you got to go back and check out the food trailer scene.
Semantics.
Yeah, or maybe someday there'll be a Wildrye Distilling event for Southwest by Southwest. That would be a cool thing. Okay, so where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Sevierville, Tennessee, which is just next to Knoxville, kind of. It's better known for being right next to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, which is actually Dolly Parton is from Sevierville.
And oh, nice! And yeah. Pigeon Forge is where Dollywood is, right?
It is. It's the gateway to the Smoky Mountains National Park.
Oh, I've always wanted to get out that way. I've been to Knoxville once, but just was there and then out. Okay, and where'd you go to high school?
I went to high school in Marion, Virginia, just across the border.
And what was the name of the high school?
The high school was Marion Senior High.
Marion Senior High, and what's the mascot there?
Mascot is the Scarlet Hurricane.
That is a badass mascot right there. We are the Scarlet Hurricanes. I love that. Okay, and what'd you do after high school?
So after high school, while I was living in that area, we have a couple of small ski resorts. So as a youngster, I got into skateboarding. And had skied a little bit at the time. So I got into snowboarding. And snowboarding took me to Breckenridge, Colorado. Lived out there for a while, rode the Breckenridge competition circuit for a couple of years. And by day, I was a snowboarder. And by night, I was a janitor.
And you must have loved snowboarding.
I snowboarded. One year, I snowboarded 120 days in Breckenridge.
So how long roughly did you do that?
About 2.5 years in Breckenridge.
Okay, and then you went to college. You went to Bozeman, but how did you hear about? Why did you choose Bozeman? Because back in the day, nobody knew where Bozeman was.
Well, so I had sort of had enough janitoring. And so, mopping the floors.
That would have taken me about one night.
Cleaning the banisters.
But he wasn't just mopping the floor. He's mopping the floor so he could snowboard.
Yeah, well, yeah. And, so I had enough janitoring, but I didn't have enough snowboarding. And so you looked at a couple of different schools, looked at moving back to Tennessee, looked at UT, Knoxville,
Big snowboarding community there.
Yeah, no, that was that, and that was a definite downside of that. But it was near home, so I looked at it, applied there, got accepted. And then also looked at CU Boulder, and then one of my dad's friends is a cool guy. Told me about this place, this mythical place in Montana called Bozeman, and it was interesting. Started looking into it and found out they had a ski hill 16 miles away from the college called Bridger Bowl, and a couple of pretty big name pro skiers called the place home. Among them was Scott Schmidt and Doug Coombs, and so when I heard about that, I was pretty much sold. So moved to Bozeman.
I love it.
Montana State.
So Montana State. Now, I almost said MSU, but that's not. You guys are Montana State.
Montana State, MSU, Montana State University.
Yep.
Bobcats.
And what was your major?
My major was chemistry, and it's sort of a roundabout way. I've done some cooking and worked at Safeway for a while, looking at jobs and kind of trying to figure out what I was going to do when I went snowboarding, and part of that obviously had something to do with college, and so got into doing undergraduate chemistry research, so research in the lab, and so that was my job.
I feel so sorry for you. In high school, there was 3 classes I hated.
It was a great job.
Oh, I had 3 classes I hated in high school. I hated geometry. There's a theorem. These 2 parallel lines do not intersect. Prove it with a theorem. No, I'll just take it on faith. I didn't like that. I didn't like writing. My English teacher was awful. Didn't like English or writing. Funny that now I'm a writer now. And then the other one I hated was chemistry. Oh my gosh, the periodical table of elements. Like, I had fun. I would make up things like UR, I thought was urine. My science teacher did not think that was fun at all. I got in trouble for that, but I thought that was hilarious. Okay, and then
You're not alone.
and then you went to after Montana State, you went to University of Washington. Go Dogs! Love me some Huskies.
Yeah.
Particularly now that my son is at Washington State University, those poor Cougars. But what did you? So you got your PhD there, right?
I got a PhD there, and so I was an organic chemist, and sort of always figured that I would do maybe pharmaceutical ingredients or whatever. But I got to University of Washington, and they had a really good material science program, and so got into the materials side of organic chemistry, and then they had a dual doctorate program with the Center for Nanotechnology. And so ended up doing organic photonic materials. That's all she wrote. Did a PhD there, graduated 2006, stayed on with the Center on Materials and Devices for Information Technology Research, CMDITR, that's a National Science Foundation Center, with a postdoctoral fellowship. It's called an Intelligence Community Fellowship, which is funded by the CIA. I'm not supposed to say that on the air, maybe, but...
That's okay. We'll forgive you. So in addition to all this really actually incredible high-level thinking stuff that's actually sincerely quite impressive, tell me about, you ended up a little bit of connection, Intellectual Ventures.
Well, so Intellectual Ventures is a really interesting place. They did a lot of things. They accumulated patent portfolios in areas of interest to them. And, I had a pretty special skill set, which was organic photonic materials, and so they had.
That is a very special skill set,
right? It is, and they had so obviously they had a need for me there, and while I was there, I was working in the same lab with the guys who wrote with Nathan Myhrvold and Grant Crilly, and Nathan Myhrvold wrote. A cookbook, a set of cookbooks called Modernist Cuisine.
Amazing cookbooks.
Yeah, and the basic idea is the art and science of cooking. And the idea was to sort of dissect the tradition and the ideas behind the traditions that we've established in cooking, what makes things good, look at them from a modern perspective, and understand why is it good? What's the chemistry? What's the science background? And that was a really interesting experience because it was fun to be a part of that, and I also met some really interesting people like Grant Crilly, who has gone on to found Chef Steps, which is an online cooking school.
And that experience, we'll get into it, particularly when we talk about your gin and tonic. But that whole experience, actually, believe it or not, kind of some of the foundational stuff for why Wildrye Distilling exists.
Yeah, it was part of the inspiration. I'm a chemist from Tennessee. Always had an interest in both cooking and flavor profiles in wine and beer, and also whiskey, and gin. And so, yeah, that experience obviously sort of led naturally into the idea of, I want to start a distillery.
I love it. Okay, so 2013 is when Wildrye Distilling opened, at least got started, right? And what were you doing professionally at that time?
In 2013, I moved to Bozeman. I moved to Bozeman in 2011 from Washington, and my wife and I had job offers out here, and I came out here as a research professor to teach chemistry at Montana State University.
So you got to come almost home, at least.
Almost home.
Probably
Yeah.
felt like home at that point.
Yeah.
You're back to Bozeman.
My wife's from the Bitterroot Valley in Montana, so
So you married a Montana girl.
I married a Montana girl.
Oh, good for
Montana
you.
farm girl.
I don't think you can get more Montana than that. I love it. Okay, so you're back here, and then you say, you know what? I'm going to open a distillery just a couple years later.
Yeah, I mean, there was a little bit of a thought process that went into that. Obviously, so my father-in-law had been growing this amazing sweet corn in the Bitterroot Valley for a long time, ever since I'd known my wife. My wife and I have been together since 2001. And so obviously I've known her family for a while, and he had this beautiful, delicious sweet corn. And being from Tennessee, I saw some opportunity.
Maybe a little moonshine. I like
Yeah.
that. Okay, so we'll pick up there in just a second. But now, Ben, you enter the picture.
Yes.
So we'll go back in time in a minute. But where actually did you and Phil first meet?
So we met at Zocala, a local coffee shop down here on Main Street.
Awesome. Okay, so you guys actually met right here in Bozeman.
That's right.
And you guys are working on a different project, thinking about it, considering it.
Yes.
That didn't happen. But within 6 months, you open up Wildrye Distilling.
That's right. We had a mutual friend introduce us and said we were both people the other one should meet. We both liked business, and when this opportunity to grow Wildrye came, it was a very natural fit.
That's fantastic. Okay, so where were you born?
I was born in Madison, Wisconsin.
Madison, Wisconsin. Okay, and then how old were you when you came to Bozeman, Montana?
I was 6 weeks old when I moved to Bozeman.
And where'd you go to high school?
I went to Bozeman High,
Bozeman High. And what's the mascot there?
the Hawks.
The Hawks. So you were 6 weeks old when you came, so you're almost a local.
That's right.
What did you say somebody called you? What mythical creature?
I got called a unicorn the other day because people around here, a lot of people aren't from Bozeman, right?
A lot, yes.
But I am. And so I got called a unicorn because they've heard of people like me, but they've never seen one.
Okay, and in 2013, when you guys launched Wildrye, what was your professional background? What were you doing then professionally?
I had a consulting business. We had recently sold a spray foam manufacturing company my family had. I took the proceeds from that, started a consulting business, and was doing some strategic planning for some local companies.
So you had manufacturing background and some
That's
consulting
correct.
background. You said, you know what? I want to make bourbon.
Well, I met Phil, and he convinced me that making bourbon was way better than what I was actually doing. And it didn't take him long to convince me.
Okay, now I teach people partnerships are a bad idea. Don't do them. Which I know you're consulting. You've
That's
seen
right.
tons of partnerships go bad.
That's right.
You guys know each other for 6 months. You start a business. I've been around you for a couple hours now. I can tell you guys actually like each other, which is huge for partnerships. You seem to get along. The business is doing great. What the heck? What's part of the things that make this partnership work?
I think that when we have an issue, we just go up to the ski hill and ski it out.
Mutual interests and complementary skill sets.
Mutual interest and complementary skill sets. A lot of partnerships don't have it. And I bet another thing, given your business background, building and selling a manufacturing company is no small feat.
That's
You
right.
probably understood, one wise teacher said, count the cost before you build a tower.
That's right.
And I suspect that you actually counted the cost, weighed the risk before entering into a partnership.
Oh, absolutely. The most important thing about creating a partnership is knowing how it's going to end. So we have documents in place to take care of all of that when the time comes.
Oh, that's fantastic. Henry Cloud, I like him as an author. He wrote a book called Necessary Endings.
That's right.
Fantastic. I like it. Okay, so 2013, you're gonna open a distillery, and so you launch in 2013, and then you had your first sales in 2014.
March of 2014.
March of 2014.
Was
So
our first sale.
I bet that. What did that feel like?
Well, I think we sort of were in the back room and said, okay, I guess we're doing this. Open the door, and there it went, and it was good. That was a great feeling.
Okay, and then your head distiller.
Trevor.
Trevor, your head distiller. So you gave me a tour of your distillery. So now what road are we on here? What road? We're on Oak and right here in Bozeman. This is a beautiful tasting room and distillery.
It's a bourbon distillery. It's got to be on Oak Street.
Yeah.
Right?
Fantastic equipment. But you didn't start here. You started like in a little closet in the back of this building, right?
Mm-hmm. This place looked very different at that time. This was the place was pretty run down. This has been a lot of things. This building is the brick building behind us is from 1916, and this was a pea cannery in Bozeman's past. And so, the farms would bring their peas that they grew, and they would cook them and put them in a can, and that was this building. So it's interesting. When we started here, this place looked very different. This was a powder coating shop, and before that, I think it was an auto shop, and then it had a lot of character. It's got 100-year-old wooden beams. And so we worked with the owners and renovated the place, and thought it would be a great spot, a historical spot on Oak Street, to have a local distillery.
And as I understood the story from Trevor, you had a little room way in the back, and then you actually had some help early on from 406
from the brewery.
From the brewery, kind of helping you use some of the. I heard about hoses being run and some really fun stuff happening.
Ran hose down the hall. Yeah, that's normal.
But from
maybe not.
How long was it before you move into this space and open it? When did this space open?
A little over 2 years after we started.
So roughly 2015, somewhere in there.
Yes. Yeah.
Tax day 2015 was our grand opening.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic! That's a good. People need whiskey.
Yeah, that's what we thought.
They need bourbon on tax
Yeah,
day.
they sure do.
Needed a drink.
Okay, now tell me about the name Wildrye. I love it, but tell me that history. Where's that name come from? Wildrye Distilling.
Well, so Great Basin wild rye is a distinctive 6-foot-tall grass that you know it if you see it, and it grows in bunches and is used for decorative purposes, and also for wildland remediation in Montana. So it's native to Montana. We liked the term rye. It sort of goes along the idea of whiskey and distillery, and then it also has wild, and that's something that we really value at Wildrye, is the idea that we came up, we sort of grew out of Montana. We sort of, our products are inspired by looking at what Montana is good at and trying to create distinctive local liquor styles that come from Montana. The styles come from Montana. So the liquor, highlights Montana's natural terroir, or the wild of Montana.
And then as we drink through some of your stuff and talk about your different spirits, there's Montana products through and through. I mean, every one seems to have a different fun Montana product. So.
Absolutely. If you think about the philosophy of distilled spirits, the reason there are so many different distilled spirits around the world is because people made distilled spirits from what they had on hand. And so the idea was to take that basic philosophy and apply modern know-how and the basic idea of using modern techniques to create spirits inspired by tradition and spirits inspired by our local area.
I love it. I don't know if you've ever heard of Baijiu, but if you go to, this is stereotypical, but there's some truth in this. If you go to Jamaica, you have rum. If you go to Mexico, you have tequila. You go to Russia, you have vodka. If you go to China, you have Baijiu. And we have a Baijiu distiller, the only one in the United States, right there in the Portland metro. And, they Chinese family, and they make Baijiu, which is amazing. So I think from now on, I'm going to think of Wildrye. To me, Wildrye is Montana's bourbon. That's what I'm just going to think of. When I think of Montana's bourbon, I'm going to think of Wildrye and your bourbon.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so let's start talking through your stuff. So the first thing you actually made, which I think is really, really cool, is that you made your 5 drops bourbon whiskey. I mean, I know you don't make it instantly. It takes a while. You put it in barrels and et cetera. But Ben, why don't you tell me about, I love, the whiskey's amazing. I'm going to drink in a second. We'll talk about the flavor profile. And the only thing I love better than bourbon is rye whiskey, which, wow, I can't wait till the end. But the 5 drops, tell me about that.
So 5 drops was a tincture around the 1900s, and it was a snake oil to cure what ails you, and we thought that was a very fitting name for our whiskey because it'll cure what ails you.
I love that. Okay,
so we found a bottle on eBay, and so we have a picture of the bottle, and we're pretty proud of this bourbon. Made with sweet corn, which is unusual. Most bourbon is made with field corn, but we use sweet corn right from the family farm, from Phil's family farm, and it's a little unique.
And, excuse me. And where's that farm at?
Over in Corvallis, Montana.
Corvallis, Montana. Okay, we have a Corvallis, Oregon, but that's where those the beavers are. So that's a different thing.
People get that confused all the time. I say, they say, where's the corn from? I say, Corvallis. And they say, well, I thought you said it was from Montana. and I say, Corvallis, Montana. If you're driving through Hamilton and you blink, you'll miss the turn to Corvallis. It's a little tiny place next to Hamilton, Montana. And it's where Marcus Daly, the Copper King, has a mansion on the Bitterroot River. So it's in Montana's Bitterroot Valley, which we call Montana's Banana Belt, which is one of the only places in Montana where you can get a really good growing season for sweet corn. And another one is Montana Macintosh apples.
Oh, awesome. And I know we're going to talk about your apple pie, and I know that you often use local Montana apples. Not local to Bozeman, but local to the state of Montana.
Local to the state of Montana.
Okay, so I'll drink this bourbon, and you guys tell me about it. You have a sip in front of you. Take a sip, and give me the flavor profiles. We've got the bourbon and the rye, so make sure you grab the bourbon.
I could drink this all day for about an hour.
So the flavor profile of the bourbon. One thing you'll notice, it's a little softer. It's both softer on the back of the palate and it's a little softer in the nose than a lot of like a Kentucky bourbon you'd think of. And a lot of that has to do with the production method. So we use fresh sweet corn, so we don't have to what you call gelatinize the corn. Meaning gelatinize means gelatinize is to solubilize the starch. And usually with field corn, what has to happen is that's a high temperature mash. And so, in Kentucky, they call that a cooker, the piece of equipment that does that. And so they essentially cook the mash. With sweet corn, we already have a relatively a large amount of simple sugar.
And that basically, in simplified terms, that means that the sugars can be broken down and consumed and eaten.
More easily, yes. And meaning that we don't need the high temperature to get it into the wash that you would with a traditional bourbon.
So you have shorter molecule chains, am I right?
Shorter molecule chains.
Ooh,
it's a higher amount of simple sugar, exactly. Rather than starch, we have a higher amount of sugar, which yeast doesn't eat starch. Yeast eats sugar to make alcohol. And so since the sweet corn has a higher degree of simple sugar, we can actually we can brew it more like you're brewing a scotch.
Nice, I like it. And you're right, I love the smoothness.
So let me describe it a different way. Just because whiskey can put hair on your chest doesn't mean everyone likes hair on their chest.
Yes, yeah. What did someone once tell me? I don't know if I should say this, but I will. You don't want grass on the playground.
Right. So this whiskey appeals to the people who like a little bit milder.
Yeah, and if someone likes something sharp, there's plenty of those. Someone wants a smooth, and I love it. I think it's fantastic. And just like you, Ben, I could drink it all day long for an hour.
That's right.
So it adds just a little bit to the flavor profile. It's a little bit sweet. It's corn forward, and fairly oaky and smoky.
Okay, so the next spirit that you came up with was actually two things. You came up with Old Tom Gin, which we'll talk about in a second, and then you have your own tonic syrup. I have before me a gin and tonic, the second one of the day that I've drank here. That's phenomenal. It's just amazing. I love it. Okay, so now this tonic goes back to your days back in Seattle. So talk to me about this tonic.
Well, so me and one of the guys, Grant Curley, out at Intellectual Ventures, had sort of plays with the idea of an Old Tom gin. And for those that aren't familiar, Old Tom was popular in 1800s England, and so it was, some people call it the missing link between Dutch Jenever, which was a sort of sweet malty juniper flavored beverage, and today's dry gin. So it actually predates today's modern dry gin. And so it has a little bit broader flavor profile. It's bright, but it has a little bit of an earthy profile. And so, so we sort of had the quest for the perfect gin and tonic. And the idea is we have an old pre-prohibition, English style gin. And so one thing we were interested in was to look at the traditional origin of tonic, because obviously that's sort of one of the quintessential drinks is a gin and tonic. And so we decided to make rather than using today's more modern synthetic quinine, high fructose corn syrup based tonic water.
Fake stuff is, I think, the scientific term.
Fake stuff, yeah, sure, and definitely synthetic. And being a synthetic chemist, I say that with love, but
Only a scientist.
So I don't mean that the wrong way.
I think Ben and I like the fake stuff model. So.
Yeah, fake stuff. There you go. So what we wanted was an all natural tonic that tastes the way tonic was supposed to taste back in sort of the same time period that the gin was popular. And so they go hand in hand. Like I said, the idea was the quest for the perfect gin and tonic.
And quinine is actually, back in the day, was helpful for malaria.
Yeah. So the basic story goes that the British, colonized a bunch of areas where malaria was endemic, a bunch of tropical areas. And so, the natives had this bush that they called the fever tree. And basically the idea is you get the fever, you chew the bark of the tree, fever goes away. And the fever turned out to be malaria, and quinine, which was originally active against malaria, now malaria is resistant to it. But that was what was in the bark. And so quinine and quinine alkaloids, quinine derivatives were found in the bark. And, around World War I, they needed a synthetic source. And so eventually they stopped deriving it from a natural source and started producing it in a lab.
But tonic kind of means medicine. To some people, it old school means medicine, so that's why we call it gin and tonic, because with gin and quinine, which was a medicine to help battle malaria, right?
Yeah, it makes the medicine go down a lot easier if you have a little gin with it.
I would love to have gin with all my medicine. I think that's fantastic. Okay, so Ben, now tell us the myth that there's some truth in it. You have an Old Tom gin. Tell me about the gin.
Well, so the myth I heard is that Tom Collins and the Collins glass and the Old Tom gin, it's all the same Tom.
Oh.
That's one myth.
Okay.
There's another myth that there was a distillery in England, and there was a spigot sticking out of this distillery, or a straw of some sort, and you'd put your... there's a tomcat involved in this. Maybe it was a cat.
There's a cat's head essentially on the wall.
There you go. And you would put the quarter in or the money in, and then the bartender inside would pour a shot of gin out through that cat's head into your mouth.
I would like that. That would be great.
Old Tom gin. There's a number of rumors about how it came about.
But an Old Tom gin has a distinctive flavor profile. There's something very distinct about an Old Tom gin versus a banker's gin, or maybe a gin that's more traditionally drank today.
Well, so Old Tom gin, like I said, predates modern white gins, and so a London dry gin comes from London. It's very dry, as you might imagine. And so the gins that we produce in the U.S. are not London dry gins, correctly named. They're actually called Western style gins. And so what you'll notice in a lot of Western style gins is they're very dry. They're very aromatic, meaning that you get a lot of juniper in the front, a lot of botanicals in the front, a lot of aromatic and nasally front of the palate flavor profile. And there's not much finish. And so Old Tom gin traditionally was a little darker, is more bitter, more savory, a little more earthy. And so what we tried to do was look at both the Western style, newer style gins and Old Tom gins and figure out what we liked about both. And one thing we like about Old Tom was the broad flavor profile, the earthy, more botanical flavor profile. But we also wanted some of the brightness. So we combined some of the methods that were used to produce both Western style and Old Tom gin, and now we have a new Tom.
New Tom gin, I like that.
So one thing to note about the gin is the color. It's kind of an amber colored.
Yep.
And when it comes off the still, it's clear, and most gins are clear. But this is amber because after it's distilled, we add a little caramel to the pot. and that's where it gets its color and just a little hint of sweetness.
Yeah, I love it. I was like, they got Old Tom Jim. Okay, whatever. I like a, perfectly named for me. I like Big Gin Captive Spirits. That juniper hits you in the head, and I love that. And then Bethany made me a gin and tonic. I'm like, okay, I repent. I'm wrong. This is phenomenal.
Well, so a lot of people equate an Old Tom gin with a barrel-aged gin. Now, if you take a Western-style gin or a London dry gin and you put it in a barrel, you don't have an Old Tom gin. You have a barrel-aged Western-style gin. And so an Old Tom gin may be barrel-aged, like Ransom, for instance, or it may not, like Hayman's. And so, Hayman's is clear, kind of sweet and syrupy. You'll notice that if you try Ransom, which is also from Oregon, that it's sort of dark, earthy, and very deep flavor profile.
Yep.
And then it's also very oaky. And so we like to say that ours is in between that idea. It's sort of in between the idea of Hayman's and Ransom. And what that allows us to do is actually use it in a broader array of cocktails than you would necessarily use either a Western-style London dry gin or an Old Tom gin.
A more traditional Old Tom gin.
A more traditional Old Tom gin.
Well, regardless, I love it. And the other thing I got to say, this is the most beautiful glass I have ever seen. Your logo, when it has alcohol, is just phenomenal. I'm like, can I steal like 2 of these? I got to take one of these home to my girlfriend.
Yeah, we can.
You can have those with our compliments.
Yeah,
yes.
those are.
Yeah, you can.
I'm not kidding. I've taken like a whole bunch of photos just because I keep liking other photos. Like, I need to stop. I've got 40 of these. That's enough. Okay, so the next thing you make is really, really cool. I was just at Kalo Rum in Kauai. Had a wonderful time. They make rum out of sugar cane, and I love it, and it's fun. I'm a huge fan. And you guys make rum. You make a dark rum, and you make a silver rum. Mm-hmm. And talk to me about this rum, and then we'll get into the little cool, fun thing about it. But
so the rum, a lot of people don't know, but Montana is the 5th largest sugar producer in the country. And it's not from sugar cane, of course. It's from sugar beets. So the eastern side of the state, we have huge sugar beet farms and sugar processing plants. And we wanted to feature that in our rum. And it's actually technically a brum because it's made with beet sugar. And
beet rum.
Beet rum, yep, that's exactly right. And so the white rum is as it comes off the still. The dark rum, we infuse flavors.
Well, I got to stop you so people can understand. So when I was at Kalo Rum, he told me, I said, so what is rum? And he said, well, rum is made according to United States law. It is made from sugarcane. And, mead is made from honey. Wine is made from grapes. Rum is made from sugarcane. And I walk in here and I go, they got rum. That's so cool. Okay, I love me some good rum. And I've discovered, that most rum, like, who cares? But really good rum is amazing. And so I start reading, I go, wait a minute, this is beets. How are you guys pulling this off? And then you got a little tiny bee up here. It's a silver bee rum. So you actually had them create a whole new category for you guys.
It's a distilled spirit specialty.
It's phenomenal. I love it. It's the ingenuity is what I'm celebrating.
Well, the basic idea is you're right. The Code of Federal Regulations, the standards of identity and purity define rum as a spirit distilled from fermented cane or cane byproducts, and so it's not rum, right? It's beet rum.
Okay, but no, okay. God bless you. I love you, but you're wrong. This is damn good rum, and this is rum, and I don't care if it's beet sugar or cane sugar. It is phenomenal.
Well,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate that. But so there's a secret, right? Is that if you take some beet sugar, about 50% of the sugar used in the United States is not actually from cane. And obviously, if you think about it a little bit, we're about the same latitude as Europe, right? So one thing that's actually interesting, and I think a lot of people don't know, is like Belgian candy sugar. Well, that's from beets.
Yep, exactly.
And then also like spirits like Cointreau. Well, that's a beet sugar distilled. So we're obviously not the first people to do this. But one thing that we wanted to do is, the Europeans wanted sugar. Again, we're back to the British. And so they had it. They again colonized some tropical climate places that produce sugar. where we, as the United States, did most of it, and also most of Europe, don't have the tropical climate necessary to grow sugarcane.
Yeah, the only place you could grow sugarcane in Montana is in the Bitterroot Valley.
Yeah, that'd be a stretch.
In a greenhouse, probably.
Yeah.
I'm making up nonsense, I know.
But so the basic idea is, we wanted to do Montana-inspired products, and again, use things that Montana is good at that maybe some people wouldn't necessarily associate with Montana. And again, like I said, is you wouldn't know it, but Western Sugar Cooperative has been operating in Montana since 1904, and they produce train carloads of sugar. And it's a farmer-owned cooperative where each share that a farmer owns in the cooperative allows them to deliver 1 acre of sugar beets per share.
Wow.
And so they bring them in on trains, they bring them in on trucks, they have football field 2-story piles of sugar beets that they then waffle chop, boil, and then recrystallize the sugar out of. And at the end of the day, you can barely tell the difference in a spoonful of cane sugar and a spoonful of beet sugar. And so we make brown sugar, we take white beet sugar, refined beet sugar, add cane molasses, blackstrap molasses, and we put it in a fermenter and ferment and distill. And it has a flavor that is flavor profile. What I like to tell people is the silver rum has a flavor profile that's very similar to like a Brazilian cachaça. And
I love me some cachaça. We have a distributor in Portland, Robert and his wife Marcia, and they bring cachaça in from Brazil. And if you ever meet her, she will scare the hell out of you, because she will tell you the proper. Do you know how to toast cachaça properly?
I do not.
Oh yeah, you have to look someone in the eye before you take your shot, and you have to say "Saúde." And the first time she did it, I thought she was like, I was scared, really. I was like, what is this small woman doing to me? And she was like, you got to say "Saúde." And she would look in the eye. And I'm like, that sounds like Mr. Miyagi from Karate Kid. And she said, no, you have to say it. Look in the eye, or something bad will happen. Well, I said, okay, "Saúde." And I looked her in the eye. And I'd researched it. She's telling the truth. Culturally, if in Brazil you don't say "Saúde" when you take a shot of your cachaça, you're cursed with 7 years, no sex. So nobody wants that. So you got to look in the eye and say "Saúde."
This
For sure.
we better work on this.
Get that right.
The one thing, so a famous drink out of Brazil, which is was the official drink of the World Cup soccer, was caipirinha.
Yes, fantastic beverage.
Yeah, and it's a very simple beverage. Our silver rum makes a mean caipirinha.
Oh, I believe it.
And it is super easy to do. You take a lime, cut it in half, and quarter it, and then add a spoonful of sugar, add a little bit of rum, muddle it all together, and then add ice and more rum. And you got a caipirinha.
That sounds fantastic. And your silver rum, we're not drinking here on the podcast, but I drank some earlier. It was my duty. I had to. Mm-hmm. Incredibly smooth. Really, really nice rum. I really liked it. Okay, before we talk about what to do with the dark rum, I love that the bottle says Wildrye Distilling right on the front. But then it says Ramsdell's Parrot silver rum. Talk to me about Ramsdell's Parrot.
Well, so we're a mining state. And in Butte, Montana, was called the richest hill on the earth, and it's also interestingly the birthplace of Evel Knievel. So just a fun fact, a fun tidbit. But it's very. Oh yeah. So the parrot, Ramsdell was Joe Ramsdell. And he had a patented copper mine in Butte, Montana. It's a very large copper mine, and it was named after Joe Ramsdell. And it's called Ramsdell's Parrot.
That's what he named one of his mines.
Yes, and so there's a couple of things that were interesting to us. One is the parrot, right? Rum, okay, it's a pirate's best friend, and arg, and then also it's the tool that a distiller uses to measure the proof of the alcohol coming off the still, and it's usually made of copper.
Damn, that's meta as F. That is fantastic. I love that.
And so the idea, it's Ramsdale's Parrot. So it's a Montana rum.
Okay, Montana's rum. I
Yeah.
love it. Okay, so what should people do with your dark rum? Any suggestions?
Well, I had a lady come in here one time, and she says, "I just been to the British Virgin Islands, so I have low expectations of you guys." And I said, "Oh, you got to try the painkiller." And so we made her a painkiller, and she says, "I'm sorry, I apologize." And she said she really enjoyed it. So painkiller is 2/3 orange juice, 1/3 pineapple juice, a little bit of coconut syrup, coconut puree, and rum, and ground nutmeg on top. And it's a classic drink of the British Virgin Islands. Another cocktail which people really, really like is we take our dark rum and we infuse it with fresh basil.
Wow.
And then what we do is we make a drink called a Thai Mule. And so it's the basil infused rum in a copper mug, and ginger beer, cock and bull ginger beer, with a little coconut on top, and a hand slapped leaf of basil, fresh basil, over the top.
Oh my goodness.
And it tastes like a chai. So it's interesting. It's a put a little Thai basil in it, and Thai Mule.
That sounds incredible. I absolutely love it. Okay, so then, you made bourbon, then you made some Old Tom gin, then you made some rum. The next thing that you guys came up with is you made some apple pie. So a lot of people don't even know what apple pie is. It's kind of a Tennessee thing. So talk to us about this apple pie.
Well, so apple pie is a Southern thing, and so
And I got to tell you, I'm drinking it now. We all have a shot in front of us. It smells so incredibly good. It is amazing.
well, sorry to be a little slow. I had to take a sip.
This makes me think of campfires.
So the history of apple pie. Apple pie is a recipe that used to be sort of associated with Tennessee moonshine, and the way it was developed is that apple cider, fresh apple cider, which was something that in the South, you have a lot of apples in the fall, and make cider. That's beautiful stuff, but it goes bad almost instantly. And so one way to keep it from going bad, minus refrigeration, because in the old days, nobody had a refrigerator. My grandfather in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, didn't get electricity till he was 20. So they didn't have a refrigerator. So to keep the apple cider from going bad, add liquor. Pretty straightforward.
I love it.
Preservative.
That's fantastic.
And so what's better than a little apple pie or apple cider cured with moonshine? Well, we add a little honey and a little cinnamon and nutmeg, and you got apple pie.
And you guys often use Montana apples, grown right here in Montana. People don't realize they have apples in Montana.
Bitterroot Valley. It's an interesting story. So, again, historically, there were apple farmers in the Bitterroot Valley, and Bitterroot Macintosh apples were famous. They're famous in New York because all the apples on the East Coast were starting to get worms, and the worm had not yet reached Montana. So there are small apple orchards, several of them that are family owned still exist, like Swanson's, which has been in their family since 1910. Has grown Bitterroot Macintosh apples and produces cider seasonally in the fall, and it is the best cider you've ever tasted.
Okay, and then now, so cider, to my listeners and to me, cider means alcohol, but you mean like non-alcoholic cider.
Non-alcoholic cider. It goes to the grocery store.
Oh.
It's unpasteurized. They take apples when they're just ripe. So it's not green apple cider. It's ripe apple cider, and they run it on a press.
Oh.
This is a Montana tradition. My parents
Yeah.
have a small orchard with around 10 trees that I grew up on. Each of us kids had our favorite tree because each apple tastes a little different. And every year we would collect the apples from the trees, take them up the road to a little place called Rocky Creek Farm. And that's literally all you did is you put them in a big press, then press out the juice, and then you'd freeze it. And that's a...
And you'd have apple cider, the rest of the year.
Apple cider.
Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, we'd get about 50 gallons a year. and drink it throughout the season. So that's a very much a Montana tradition, apple cider.
Yeah, this tastes incredible. I'm just drinking it straight, no ice, just neat. Are there some things that people do with it besides that?
Oh yeah. We make a drink called a Honey Crisp, and obviously the name Honey Crisp is an apple, and so what we do is we take a honey simple syrup, which is half honey, half water, and we make our own cinnamon simple syrup. So it's cinnamon, honey, apple pie, and then what we do is we balance it with lemon juice, and so it makes it fantastic. You'd think it would be sweet, but it's very similar to the concept of a lemonade. You have sweet and tart. And another popular drink, which is very simple, is we take apple pie and cranberry juice over ice.
Oh, I love it. Okay, and then my sister Jackie, she loves ice cream cocktails. So I got her some Kahlua coffee rum, which was amazing, to make her some ice cream. I want to take her some apple pie and make some kind of apple pie vanilla ice cream cocktail. I think she would love that.
Absolutely.
We have a couple of local organic ice cream makers here in the valley, and our neighbors at the kombucha bar did just that. It was fantastic. It ended up more like a milkshake, but it was
pretty all right.
Pretty darn good.
Okay, the next thing you made was you made vodka. I tasted your vodka. It's incredibly smooth. Oh my gosh. If someone wants a smooth vodka, it's just amazing. It's kind of funny that you waited that long to make vodka, but you did, and the vodka's great. If people want a really smooth vodka, I would highly recommend it. But then the next thing you did is let's see if I can get this right, Montana Flathead Cherry Infused Vodka. I don't even know what's that. Tell me about this stuff.
I'll give that one to Ben.
So this came, my wife has a friend, and she's got a cherry orchard up on Flathead Lake. And they grow, it's another banana belt here in Montana, so flathead cherries are famous. And the lady had pre-sold her entire crop, but then rain came and split her cherries, which means that she couldn't sell them to the general public.
They got too much moisture and they got little cracks in them.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
And it ruined her crop for a retail sale. But a couple weeks later, she put on her Facebook page that she had infused it in vodka, and it was amazing. And then her Facebook blew up. How can we get the cherry vodka? And so we reached out to her and said, we can absolutely help you with that. And so we bought her entire crop from her and started infusing the cherries into the vodka.
Now, I have a warm place in my heart for farmers because they work their butts off, usually for nothing. And you saved a lost crop.
That's right.
And you made an amazing spirit out of it.
Thank you.
That is like the best of both worlds. Taking care of a farmer and making a spirit, that's a fantastic story.
Yeah, well, in Montana, you got to help each other out because it's a tough place to make a living. And so everybody helps each other, and that's how we all succeed here.
Well, one thing you'll notice about the cherry vodka is I tell people that the recipe is super complicated. we take cherries, we pour vodka over the top, we wait a week, and then we filter the cherries out and bottle the vodka. And that's it. There's no coloring. You'll notice it's a deep red. That's all natural cherry. We don't add any sugar. There's no artificial anything. And so you'll notice a little bit of an almond flavor from the pit. And so they're not pitted cherries, and they're never cooked. So just like the apple pie, it gives it an interesting flavor profile because cooked cherry is cherry jam, and uncooked cherry is cherry, and that's from a little chemical reaction we know as the Maillard. And so when you cook a fruit or a steak or anything.
A little caramelization.
Yeah, exactly. What happens is it changes the flavor profile dramatically. And so we take our cherries, as you know, Ben got them, and then we freeze them, and then we add them to vodka when we're ready to go, and they have never been heated.
So, go ahead.
Well, we might be taking a bit of a risk with our super complicated formula here and broadcasting it nationally. But it's amazing how oftentimes the simple solution is overlooked, and it yields tremendous results in this case. It's a very unique product. It doesn't taste medicine-y at all.
Yeah, and I just have to say I I know that you say on the label it's a cherry vodka, but to me it tastes like a cherry spirit, like the best cherry spirit I've ever had. And you're right, that subtle hint of almond is just perfect. I don't even think it's odd. I just think of like, this is really good cherry. This is just a cherry liqueur, not a liqueur, but a cherry spirit, for lack of a better word. I mean, it's fantastic.
It adds a little bit of earthiness to the product.
Okay, so besides drinking it straight, which I could do this all day long for an hour, what else do people do with this?
All kinds of things. My personal favorite, I like the lemon San Pellegrinos. So, and put about 2 shots of that in a lemon San Pellegrino.
Wow.
We've just simply in Coca-Cola and make old-fashioned cherry Coke.
Cherry Coke.
Oh, yeah.
That sounds dangerous.
It is dangerous. One thing that we do here in the bar, we do a chocolate, I don't even know what it's called.
Chocolate covered cherry.
That's it. So in the falls, and we just take hot chocolate, the cherry vodka, and then a little bit of amaretto.
Which we make in-house.
Wow, that sounds incredible.
It's fantastic. It's excellent. It's simply in a Moscow Mule, or in a mule.
Okay, so last year Christmas, my girlfriend and I were charged to bring special martinis to the family Christmas event. So we did some. We took some local vodka, Rose City Distilling vodka, and some amazing cranberry spirit, which from Clear Creek Distilling. Oh, almost could thought their cranberry liqueur, which was incredible, and we made a cranberry martini. So I'm thinking this year, somehow, some way, I think I want to make like a chocolate cherry martini for Christmas, and I'm going to use Wildrye Distilling vodka, and I'm going to come up with a chocolate liqueur, and we'll tinker with it because we'll have a lot of fun tinkering with it. I think that will be this Christmas's holiday martini.
That sounds wonderful.
I love that.
Great idea.
Okay, and what about this? Did I hear something about cherry lemonade?
Oh, cherry lemonade.
Yes. Would you like to try one?
A little bit of one, because I got to drive. But tell me so I would like people to go get some of this stuff. And how do they make the cherry lemonade? I'm sure it's a very complicated recipe.
Yeah, like everything we do around here.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
There's multiple ways. One, you can go buy some of your fanciest, nice, organic lemonade from your favorite establishment. Alternatively, make it yourself. Get some lemons, fresh squeeze, squeeze them, and what you need is about 1 ounce of fresh squeezed lemon, and you need about 3/4 ounce of simple syrup. And if you don't know how to make simple syrup, it's simple. And so what you do is you take half sugar and half hot water, stir it till it dissolves, and you got simple syrup. And so about 1 ounce of lemon, fresh lemon, 3/4 ounce of simple syrup, and about 1.5 ounces of cherry vodka, and you can top it with a little soda water. And it is fresh lemonade, and it's a little fizzy.
I like the fizziness in the lemonade.
Yeah,
that sounds fantastic.
That's the key to the whole thing, is something with a little bit of carbonation in it.
Well, I'm all in favor of now. I love me some Hood River cherries, from Oregon.
Oh,
but
absolutely, I like the Rainier cherries.
But my God, so good. But now okay. I've got a new cherry love. Love me some Flathead cherries, particularly when they've spent some time at Wildrye Distilling. Okay, and speaking of people, of course, your stuff is available in Montana. It's available in Wyoming. You've just launched in Washington, so available there. Tennessee, of course, because that's where you're from.
Absolutely.
Got to have it in
Family
Tennessee.
connections.
If the apple pie is not a bestseller in Tennessee, it will be soon. Those people gotta catch a clue, man. This
Absolutely.
is amazing. New Jersey, people get it in New Jersey.
Yep.
And then, although you haven't launched yet in Oregon, people can get it in Oregon. They go to their Oregon liquor store and say, order me up some of that cherry, or get me some of that. I need Montana's bourbon that comes from Wildrye Distilling. And then when you launch in Oregon, let me know, because I would have some fun promoting this, because this stuff is amazing.
Well, we're looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
And then so that's the current list. And then as people, I'm sure, check your website, as you add states, people will be able to find it. And then as you add overseas, I got friends in Japan. We got to get this stuff to Japan. I think it would go really well there.
We've had a little interest from Japan, and we're small. We've had a lot on our plate. And we're growing rapidly, so we would love to explore the overseas market.
Okay, and speaking of growing and growth, you said, what's your favorite? What's your favorite? I said, man, I love gin, but I love a rye whiskey. And you poured me a rye whiskey, and the bottle had no label. I said, well, what do you call it? I said, this is our first batch. We don't have a bottle yet. We don't have the label yet. And we're about to drink this. It is absolutely incredible. I'm a rye whiskey snob, and this is really, really good rye whiskey. I got to tell you.
Well, cheers to you.
So walk us through the flavor profiles there, Ben or Phil, either one of you.
Go ahead, Ben.
I'm speechless.
Okay, and so you haven't yet released the name yet, so the name's not out yet. Maybe by the time the podcast comes out next month or two, the name will be out. When it does, I'll edit the text so people can see it. But we don't have a name yet. But you're getting ready to launch us into production.
Well, we were going to call it something complicated, like Wildrye Rye, and so the basic idea is we thought this was a really good platform to showcase the Wildrye name and where it came from, and the idea is we use crack rye, we use malted barley, and that's it. And so what we do is it's a rye is kind of spicy.
Yep.
But at the same time, it has some subtle flavors, and very distinct flavors. And so the basic idea was to create a whiskey that went into second use bourbon barrels. So it's a rye mash whiskey that is aged in oak that is a little less strong. So what we do is we have a more subtly flavored, a little less woody, and a little less intense flavor profile. So you can really taste that rye, and it mixes well. And
no,
again,
just drink this neat. I draw the line. That's it. This is just neat.
Fair enough. I was going to say it's best by itself, or maybe one rock, but it does mix well.
I believe it. I was just teasing. But
I know. Fair enough.
I love neat, or maybe just half a rock.
But what about a Sazerac?
Okay, you got me there. I do love a good Sazerac.
So yeah, I mean, and you need some quality rye.
And I do love an old fashioned. That's one of my favorite cocktails.
Absolutely.
And an old fashioned with a nice rye whiskey. Box Social, one of my favorite bars in Portland. They make a really nice old fashioned, and a lot of good theater when they make it. And then the product is good. I'm going to tell them they need to get a hold of some Wildrye Distilling rye whiskey to make me a really nice rye old fashioned. That would be phenomenal.
Absolutely.
Well, we'd love to meet them.
Yeah.
They're great people there. I've done fun events there. So really nice. Well, guys, it's been just a delight to have you on the Portland Country Podcast and tell your story. I can't wait till your stuff officially launches in Oregon. We'll celebrate it. The good news about Oregon is that people that love spirits and really good alcohol in Oregon can order it from their Oregon liquor store, which is the cool thing about the Oregon system. Some things are tough about it. That's one of the cool things. I'm going to continue to follow your brand, and I just celebrate what you're doing, and I love it that it's Montana-centric. You have Montana products, local, meaning, it's from somewhere in the state of Montana, because local in Montana is different than local in Portland.
Local is pretty big in Montana.
Yeah.
But when you can drive 100 miles an hour, that makes sense. I mean.
Well, it helps
That's
it helps you get across Montana a little more quickly.
And since I love Bozeman, it's great. I'll probably come back. So you're in a wonderful place. You're both local guys. Made it good. I feel bad for the two partners that aren't here, but you're only two ones that matter anyway.
That's right.
Feels like no, don't say that.
Uh-oh.
Well, guys, cheers. Thank you so much for having me on the Portland Country Podcast. Love what you do. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day.